So hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining me today for our soft pastel art class for adult beginners. Our subject today is a little bird. He's very cute. So he's sitting on a branch and he's got a beautiful soft blurry background. So this is quite a lovely little picture, and I found it in a free reference photos group on Facebook. So if you do paint him and you want to share your picture somewhere online, please make sure that you acknowledge the photographer. Her name is up here under the title. So these Facebook pages are really helpful because people post wonderful photos for us to paint, and the least we can do is thank them. So it's always a nice thing to do. All right, I'm going to share my screen now. So I'll flip you over to be able to look at my desk, and that's where we will be doing our painting. So now you should be able to see my desk and my very messy backboard that's got lots of pastel and stuff all over it. These are the notes that you should have received with your video. And also you'll have reference photos. So you should have received a JPEG of both of these photos, a black and white and a color version. The reason you receive them separately is so that you can open up your photos onto a separate screen, like another screen on your desk or an iPad or something else. So you can look at your picture on a screen, you can zoom in, see it up close, and just give you a bit of a clearer idea of what we're doing. If all you have is your printed version of your notes, then that's absolutely fine as well. And that's what we use when we do classes in person here at Delicious Art. So it's also perfectly fine to use those. The first part of our class today will be using charcoal, which is how most of my classes go. We'll start off drawing our little bird in black and white. But the first part, before we do that, we're going to focus on the drawing. So you can see on your coloured picture on your notes, I've put a grid shape. So that's a line down the middle and across the centre. So that breaks our picture up into 4 pieces. And it helps us to draw it just by focusing on each quarter and working our way around the page. So this is just one method for drawing things to scale, and it's the method that I like to use in my classes. There are lots of other ways to do it, but this is the way we do it here. It doesn't hurt to learn a few methods to see what suits you, and everybody's got different ways of drawing. So we'll refer to this colour version to begin with so that we can get our drawing in the right spot. Then when we're doing some shading with the charcoal, we'll move up here into the black and white picture to focus on the tones. So let's begin with an art diary or a piece of drawing paper. This is my art diary, nice white page, and we need some charcoal. So I have my little sticks of charcoal in this container here. I like to use these takeaway containers because then they're transportable when I go to classes and things, and I can keep everything semi-organized. So I've got a few different sizes in there. I'm just going to grab I'll start off with this one here. I quite like drawing with this size. And we're going to draw up a portrait-shaped rectangle on your page. So this will be our little exercise where we look at tone and we also practice the drawing. So you can see, I'll just move my notes over so you can see what I'm referring to. So we're going to refer to the colour picture and the grid. So if you want to pop a grid onto your page, so just rule a line down the centre, that way and that way. You can see I haven't measured this. I tend to do this part by eye, but when we move on to the colour version with pastels, I will measure it. But this is fine for now. So what I like to do is look at each quarter, so you can cover up the other quarters or just ignore them, whatever's easier for you. And we're going to study where the little bird intersects on those grid lines. So you can see that the top of the head intersects just there. And what I'm looking for now is to find how high up on the grid line, where does it intersect? Is it halfway up? Is it a third? Is it a quarter? Etc. To find the answer to those questions, you can use your ruler, and I can measure this area. So I can say that's 7 centimeters tall. The middle of 7 centimeters is there. It's my halfway mark. So the little bird's head intersects just below halfway. That's how I work that out. If you want to put more grid lines on your picture, you can. You can actually grid that up even more and work in smaller segments if that's easier, which is often easier if it's a more detailed picture. So then I can go over here to my work page. I can measure this. It says 8 centimeters tall, so halfway is 4. So if my little bird head is slightly below halfway, I can say it's about there. Okay, so finding all those spots and marking in those areas will give us an idea of where it needs to intersect this line and where it sits inside this quarter. So it intersects there. Then I can come down and I can look at where it intersects on the crosshair. So let's center that, make that halfway is 2.5, which is exactly where that little bird crosses the line just here. So I can head over to this page, can find my halfway, which will be about there. And that's going to be where his little chest intersects with my grid line. So now we don't have any other information, no other grid lines that we can use to find the shape of the bird, which is another reason to put more grid lines on if you want to. So we're just going to draw this arc around here. Now we've got to figure out where the beak sits. The beak sits about that far below that mark. So hang on, let's find this. Let's have a look. Put the ruler on. So the beak sits where the head intersects the line. The beak sits lower than that. So I can say the head intersects there. So the beak must be about there. I'm going to say it's about there. And how far in? So it's also on halfway. So it comes out to there. Okay. So then I can work out the beak goes there. And then you can kind of just join the dots from there. So the beak has this little shape on it. It's kind of got a flat top and then a bottom angle bit like that. And then it comes down and the chest bulges out a little bit just there. So you can see that chest bulging out there and it comes to that intersection there. Then we can come across to this line here where we found the intersection for the head. Draw that across. It's got to come over here to the top of the beak, inside, okay? And it's not a really big, rounded sort of head. It has got an arc to it, but it's kind of flattish. And I think I just went too tall then. Definitely did. So I need to find my kneadable eraser, which I put somewhere. There it is. So see how I went too tall. And I also started at the wrong place. Doesn't help at all. See, I am human. Okay, so starting here and coming out and keeping it not too bulbous. You want to keep it sort of flattish and down to the beak. So that's the shape of the bird in that segment of the picture. While we're here, we can look at the branches. So we can see that the branch that runs up this way here intersects at about the chest there. So I can draw a line to there, just a light line through to there. We're just going to draw the branches in lightly for this part. We're not going to do all the detail on those, but it's just good to work out where they sit. So when we come to do it next time, we're going to remember where all the branches are. So again, looking at your grid lines and where they intersect, this intersects slightly above halfway. So down through here, and then do a little V shape down through there. It's actually behind the beak, but you can move it if you want to, and across to there. And then we've got another little branch that comes across up the top here. And then there's a skinny one that comes down through there like that. So in this top quarter, we've got most of our branches in. I'll pop this little guy here. The branches kind of break the background up a little bit and create some interest. So I think they're nice to leave in. The one I don't want to leave in is down here at the bottom. It looks a bit funny sitting there, so we could potentially just leave that one out. And I don't think that's going to matter very much at all. So I'm going to leave that out. If you want to pop it in, feel free. Okay, so they're all the shapes and lines we need to have inside this quarter. Okay, that's all we need to have in there. If you want to pop the eye in for the bird, you can. So it sits at about half, just slightly left of halfway, about there in the head. Okay, so I just want to mark in where that sits. Now we can continue over into the top right quarter, and we're going to do the same process over here. So we're going to find where this line intersects with the grid mark. So if halfway is 5, half's 2.5, so it's just inside of the halfway mark. So I can come over here, find my halfway, and put it about there. So I can say that's about where the bird intersects with this line. So then we can draw a line from the head, the back of the head, down to here. It's got a slight little bump in it, and that'll give us the beginnings of the wings. Then we can, that's about all we need to do on the bird in that section. And if you look at this shape here in this grid section, so you can see it's like a triangle of the bird. So we've got that triangle shape over in here. That's this area here, that area there. That's our triangle shape. Then we can continue with the branches. So we can continue bringing them through and drawing them in. Branches are organic, so we can actually have a bit of a play with those. If you want to move them around or do them slightly differently, you can. No drama at all. Okay, so I can bring that down to there, and they're never quite straight, so that suits me perfectly because I'm not good at straight lines. And the branch comes through like that. So you can just draw all those in. There's another little one up in the corner there. Didn't see that one before. And just mark in where those little branches will all sit. Then we can continue down into this bottom right-hand quarter. So now we've got to figure out where does the bird intersect at the bottom here, where his little feet sit. So I can again get my ruler, look at this at 7 high, 3.5. So 3.5 way is about there. So it's just a little bit higher than halfway. So that's 9, which is 4.5. So I'm going to put it about there. Halfway is there. So if I put his body about there, then we've got the tail. So we've got the tail and the wings. They're those little pointy bits. So this is the body. It comes across and it comes down into the tail to about there. Okay, so we can draw that line through to there, across and down on an angle. Then we can come up. Then we've got the wings. So the wing sits just inside. It's not quite as long as the tail, so it doesn't come as close to the edge of the page. So I should probably draw that properly. Tail there, and then the end of the wing comes to there. And then the rest of the body can be drawn in from up here on the grid line. So we can pop that in through to there and down to there. I made my bumps a bit too bumpy. And we'll continue our branches. So this is just a really good way to get a drawing together. Get all the bits and pieces in the right place. He's going to look quite fat because he's got this white tummy that we can't really see the edge of because it's against a light background. So he will look quite fat, but once we've finished him, it'll all make sense. Trust me, I've done this before, believe it or not. So now we can join this line to this line and give that bird a lovely big tummy coming around like that. So now we've got our bird shape basically in there. Just going to fix up the back of this wing because it's a little bit too bumpy, lumpy, something like that. Okay, and we've got to continue this branch down through here. So just continue that line all the way through here. And again, you can look for negative space. So you can actually see the shapes around things rather than the shape of the thing that you're painting. So for instance, you can look at the negative space around the bird's tail and the branch and replicate that on your page. So looking at this shape here instead of the actual bird and the branch, which can get a bit challenging sometimes. So just check your negative space against what you've drawn to make sure you've got things in the right spot. This branch needs to come more that way. Not that it matters because branches are organic. So, okay, so I've got my bird where it needs to sit. We can draw in its little feet. So the legs start at the back part and they come across here and down, and then the little claw comes under the branch and around like that and across the branch at the front. So if we draw those little claws in like that, that'll sit the bird on the branch nicely with his feet in the right spot. And again, you can look at the grid line and see how far inside the line his little feet sit, and the angle and all those sorts of things you can check. Okay, so now we've got our bird sitting on our page. When we do this in pastels, we're going to fill in the whole background first. But with charcoal, we're not going to worry about the background. We're just going to focus mostly on the bird, just to notice where the different tones are. So by tone, I mean the shade from light to dark. So with your charcoal, you'll get tone. So you can go really light. I'll just show you with a stick. You can go really light like that, and then you can press harder and harder and harder and harder until you get to really dark, or as dark as you can. So that is tone. That's going from light all the way through to dark with a piece of charcoal. And they're the things that we want to be looking for in this picture. So when we grab the black and white version, we're looking at the different tones in this picture. So when you look at it, you can see that the bird is mostly a mid-tone, okay? It's mostly around this middle grey area that all the feathers seem to be, except for a few of the lighter areas and a few darker areas, but mostly it's mid-tone. The branch is also mostly mid-tone. So you can see the branch and the twigs and things are kind of all mid-tone greys. There's a little bit of shadow on the right side of the branch or the underside of the branch. So the thicker branches have a little bit more of a shadow and light side, which will make them look rounder. Okay, but most of this picture, or most of the bird and the branch, is in a mid-tone grey. The background is a mottly sort of smudgy, effect, but we'll look at that later in colour. We've got thinner branches that still have a little bit of tone in them, a little bit of light and dark. On the bird, there's a fair bit of white. So you can see white under the tail there. There's a little bit of light or white under the wing and on the belly. And of course, up around the eye and the cheek, and a tiny bit here on the back. So we've got a little bit of light, but mostly mid-tone. So knowing that now, we can start to draw in our darks first. So I didn't talk about darks, but you can see darks under the wing where it touches the body. And there's a few little dark lines in between the feathers where they're casting a shadow. We've got shadow under the bottom of the bird here at its rear end. And then there's also shadow underneath where the legs sit on the branch. So all those feathers in there, they may well be quite light, but because they're in shadow, they're a little bit darker. So we're noticing all the tones. And of course, the eye is quite dark and the beak. There's a couple of shadow spots in there. So if you get your charcoal piece, now you want a shorter, fatter piece that you can actually hang on to quite easily when it's sideways. Okay, so to draw this, I used a longer, thinner piece, but now we want something a bit shorter and fatter, because what we want to do is start to pull it across the page. So first up, I'm just going to draw the wing in here and get this sort of the shape of that so we can find it again. And now we're just going to study the black and white version and put the lights and the darks in. So I can see the wing is mostly mid. So if you just run your charcoal over the wing like that and keep it mid-tone. And then on the top of the head, around about here, just looking at the black and white version, it's a little bit darker at the top there. It gets a bit more dark grey. Comes around to the front and it's a mid-tone there. The beak is really dark, so we'll make that nice and dark as you can with your stick of charcoal. It's also inside the head, so don't put it right to the edge. It comes inside the head. He's looking at us on a little angle, this guy. So the beak is actually coming from in here, not the very edge. He's lost his point there a bit. Underneath the eye, we've got a little, a bit of white and a little bit of dark. So I'm just going to squiggle a little bit of that through there. And then we've got the chest. And so up here on the chest area, it's quite dark in there. Can you see how dark it is through that section there? And then we come down into the chest and we've got a lot of white at the front of the chest. So around this area here, and there's white between the wing and the chest. So I can leave that sort of unfilled at this point and then just start to wisp in more grey around the feet, like all that grey sort of colour around there. The end of the tail has a bit of grey and various tones of light to dark in it. And then the wing is the same. So the end of the wing has a range of tones and things through there too. Okay, so now we've got our mid-tone on there. Just grab your finger and push it in a little bit. So just want to push this in. I'm just pressing quite lightly. I don't want to press too hard because I don't want to lose my lights and I don't want to soften my darks either. It's very easy to soften the darks in willow charcoal because it's so soft. Okay, so that's basically the tones. That's the mid-tones that we've put in mostly. Now we can come back in with some more charcoal and just darken up those darker areas. So I can see there's shadow here up on the shoulder. I'm going to call it a shoulder. Darker there. And you can see that in the black and white version. And then there's a little bit of more dark down through here, just in that belly area. In the colour version, it's more of a dark orangey colour. Okay, but in the black and white picture, it's quite dark through there. So pop a bit of darkness around there. If you go too dark, just dab it and it'll lighten up a little bit. And then we've got some slight shadow just here under the wing. Okay, and then down here as well. So there's some shadow through here, and we've also got some wing shapes. So this sort of shape happening that's got shadow in it. So I'm just going to dab that softly to soften off the lines, but keep them there just very subtly so we can still see the wing shapes, or the feather shapes, sorry, in through that area there. Just doing some of those loopy shapes like this to indicate where the feathers sit. And if you keep them sort of a bit broken, softer sort of marks, then, you'll be able to just keep it looking quite natural and just dab like that to soften off your lines. So it just blurs it a little bit, pushes it in. But we just still want to sort of accentuate a little bit some of those lines. And you'll find a way to do that with your pastel as well. The way to hold your pastel stick, or, how hard to press and all the things. So I'm just putting a little bit of more information in there just to give it that feathery effect. Up behind the eye area, just in here, it's a little bit darker too. So we can darken off around there in amongst the feathers. And then if it's too much, just dab it again and soften it off. And then if you want to put your dark eye in, so let's put the eye in. It's like literally a black circle. And then what we want to do is get the white around it. So this is the tricky part. This is where we need to use the kneadable eraser. So I like to take the charcoal off to get the white back in using the eraser. So I can shape it like that, like a knife edge. And I'm going to attempt to draw that little bit of white around the edge of the eye with my eraser. See, just through there. It's not quite as white underneath, so I can come back with a bit of softly, a bit of charcoal around in there, because I want to get that right side of the eye whiter just through here. Okay, that makes the eye itself look stronger and darker. So just darkening that off a bit more, and then dabbing it with your fingers to lighten up a little bit. And then we've got to put a shine in the eye. So make yourself a point with your kneadable eraser. And we're just going to push it on and off. So hopefully it'll lift up enough of the charcoal to leave a little dot. Nearly there. It's not quite white enough. So I can make a new point and dab it on. That might be enough for now. And just make that a tiny bit smaller. And then it's kind of got this little V shape that comes from the eye, like around the tear duct area. If they have tear ducts, I don't know, but that little shape that comes across like that in a little triangle towards the beak. And the beak comes out of the face here. Okay, so he's looking at us, he's got his head tilted just a little bit. So we've got to remember that so that we make sure we put the beak in the right spot. Okay, so just checking all my tones again. If you need to get more white back in around under the wing down here, then by all means do that with your eraser. Okay, so I'm just rubbing that off with the eraser to get a bit of white happening back in here. We're not going to worry too much about textures and feathers and things at this point. We'll do that in the colour version. This part of the class is just to get familiar with the tones, just so we remember where the whites and the darks are. I'm just kneading my eraser. So you need to keep finding a clean part so you can keep removing the charcoal, because if you keep using the same spot for too long, it won't remove it. It'll just put it back down because it stays dirty. So you've got to keep kneading it, finding a clean bit. Okay, so that's the white down here on the tummy that I'm doing. It's got quite a bit of white down through there. And I'm just doing these soft little wispy sort of shapes with my eraser. Okay, so little soft shapes. Sorry, should have put my phone on silent. Soft little shapes through here to get those little white feathers in there. So you can actually draw with this eraser. You can use it to remove and draw and blend and do all sorts of things. They're very helpful, useful things, these erasers. See how that's just softening off all those little feathers in there? It looks really nice now. Soft and wispy. Lovely. Come up into the chest so we can just soften off the edges there, because it's not a hard edge, it's all soft and feathery. Just want to keep it nice and soft. Lovely. And then there's a little bit of white just up around the face there. So between the face and the chin, up in here, there's a bit of white running around through there and up under the beak. So we'll just whiten that off a tad. And then this is our rehearsal. So now when we go to do the colour version, we'll remember where it's got to be. And then a little bit of white on the top of the beak as well, just here. Just there. And there's a tad of white, see in the wings, so down between the two wings at the back there, there's a little bit of a white or light area. So we can lighten that off a tad. That just divides the wings up for us so we can see that there are two there. One's closer to us because the other one's turned away. And you can even then just draw in a little bit more light down through here. There we go. So that is a nice little exercise just to find out where all the whites and the lights and the darks and things sit to get our drawing right. If you want to shade in your branch, you can do that. You just do that quickly with your charcoal. Notice that it's darker on the underside. So this underside here is darker. There's shadow there. That's going to turn our branch. It's going to make it round and give it some texture and body. And we can just dab it and keep going. I'm not going to get too into doing the branches and things, but you get the gist. So a little bit dark on one side, just to make it turn and look like a solid object. The little feet will need more work when we do those in colour. They've got a bit of lights and darks and things on them. But just remember with the feet, you've got to have the hooks coming out and then hooking under the branch. Okay, otherwise it won't look real. And the little feet come out of there. It's covered in feathers really, but we can indicate that anyway. Okay, coolio. So let's move on to the colour version. Now we've got that, we've rehearsed that. Let's have a look at colours first. So I have some here that I used earlier for the same picture. So I'm just going to put them on my page here. So primarily we have blue and orange in this picture, which is a really nice complementary blend. So blue and orange sit opposite each other on the colour wheel. Anything opposite is its complementary colour, and they always work really well together. When you mix them, however, they make mud, and mud is lovely. So let's see, what colours have I got in here? I'm looking at the background behind the bird first. So we want to look at the colours that are sitting in behind the bird. And for the background, I've picked out a pale blue, which is a light blue, to represent the sky, and a little bit of orange or apricot colour. That's that one there. I can see quite a bit of that down in the bottom of the picture and wispied around the top as well. So we don't know what's in the picture. It could be a snowy day, could be anything. Can't really see anything in the background, but we have got a very nice, soft, blurry background that we can recreate. The other colour I had picked out is this warm grey. So it's like a very pale brown cement sort of colour. And I can see a little bit of that wisping around in the background as well, and also in the tree branches. So that'll be a good colour to get a bit of tone happening through the background and the tree. So they're my three colours for my background. Then I have, for the bird, I've got 3 different oranges. So I've got this one, which is a dark reddy orange, and I'll use that in these dark shadowy areas. Okay. Then I've got a mid, which is not much lighter, but it's slightly different. And if you squint, you can, through your eyelashes, you can tell that the first one's darker. That'll be for most of this orange area on the bird. And then I've got my light, bright orange, which I quite like. So that'll give him a little bit of brightness and make it glow a bit. So they're the 3 oranges that I've used for my bird. And I might also pick up this guy, which I'm going to put into the sky as well. See how we go. So I've got that there if I need it. The other colour, of course, is blue. So this is a beautiful ultramarine blue. It's lovely and bright and yummy. And a lighter blue to go with that to get some contours through the feathers. I have a very pale blue. That's that one there. To use, actually, it's pretty much the same as the sky. So I should have just had one pale blue for that. To put through the feathers as well. And then there's white, of course, which you can't see because it's on white paper, but there's a bit of white there for the highlights and the eye and the feathers. And I've got blue violet here, which is my dark, my favorite dark. So that's going to be nice in under the wing, around the feet, and in some shadows. So that'll be nice in the bird and in the tree. I think that's the same. So oh no, that's charcoal. Put that in there. Then I've got a khaki kind of green. So that's the color of the branch, I reckon. It sort of matches the branch color. And what is that one? That's a reddy brown. So that's a red violet, I think. It's a nice dark as well. I might use that, I might not. And the branch will have the shadow in it, plus the olive green and a little bit of this creamy apricot color as well for some of the light on the branch. So you can see there's a bit of light in there, or little light spots, speckly spots in there. So they're my colors that I've picked out for this guy. There's quite a few, and some of them look like they've been repeated, but we can use the same color in 2 spots. That's fine. So they're the colors that we're going to use for that. I might leave you for 10 minutes and you can get your colors together and then maybe start to draw up the bird. So I'm going to use this blue colored paper. Doesn't really matter what color we use because we're going to fill it all in, but something light might be easier to fill in with these lighter colors, your pale blue and your apricots, than a dark paper. If you don't want to do a background, if you want to leave your background and just use the paper color, you're welcome to do that too. So it's up to you what you choose to do. But I do like to give my backgrounds a nice sort of blurry effect. So it'll be a bit of fun to play with that. So I shall leave these things here and we'll have maybe 10 minutes, come back at about 5 to 2. So it's 1:45 now. So we'll come back in about 10 minutes and we'll get started and do our pastel painting. Perfect. So I'll see you soon.